Well, it's hard to believe, but at the end of this month, I will have owned my Indian Roadmaster for 2 years. Let me give you a quick walk around of my motorcycle, and I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like about my Indian Roadmaster. So when I did the walk around, I forgot to mention how dirty my bike is, but this is my daily driver. I ride it every day. Of course, living in Texas, we're blessed with the opportunity to ride year-round. So before I give you my little review, let me just say a quick word about reviews in general. I love to watch motorcycle reviews. It's not uncommon at night for me to fall asleep with my tablet on my chest watching motorcycle reviews. And of course, a lot of them, somebody's gone to a demo ride, and it's a short test drive. It's still helpful. A lot of times they're on motorcycles they've never ridden before, and you know, they can pick up on things that those of us that normally ride a certain type of motorcycle may not notice. And then there are some videos where they have a good relationship with a dealership, and they'll let them take the motorcycle on an extended test drive, sometimes an all-day ride. And then of course, some of these moto vloggers that get tons and tons of views, I don't know if it's the dealer or the manufacturer, will provide them with a new bike for a whole month to really give a thorough review, and I think those are even more helpful. So I guess what I'm saying is, the more time you spend on a motorcycle, the more that you get familiar with its strengths and its weaknesses. So I've had this motorcycle be 2 years at the end of this month. I've got just a hair under 34,000 miles. So by the end of the month, I'll cross that 34,000 mile mark. So I'm riding 17,000 miles a year. And so I live in Southeast Texas. So I've ridden this motorcycle in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado. Matter of fact, the Colorado trip was this past summer. Put almost 3,000 miles on the motorcycle on the Colorado trip. So I've got a lot of time in the saddle. Of course, the problem in this case with an owner review, owners can be a little biased. You know, some people think that their vehicle is the best vehicle on the planet, when that may or may not be true. Well, certainly this motorcycle has some tremendous strengths, but it has one weakness, in my opinion, and I'll tell you about that weakness before the review is over. So I thought I would think of different categories, and I may miss a category, but I thought I would consider different categories and rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 in the different categories. And so the first category is the fact that this is an iconic brand. Now, certainly Indian has a storied past. There's no doubt about that. But it's still very much an iconic brand. And this is my Indian Roadmaster. And so on that fact, I would give it a 10 for being an iconic brand. The only other brand I think would get that equally high mark would be Harley-Davidson. Of course, some might argue that Triumph, BMW, some of those would deserve a 10 as well, but I give it a 10 as far as being iconic. Of course, one reason we buy motorcycles is we like the way the motorcycle looks. Now, I realize that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I can tell you I've owned 20 motorcycles in almost 50 years, and Indians get more attention than any other. Of course, it may be because you don't see very many of them, or not near as many as you do other brands. So some of that may just be the exclusivity of it, but I love the style. Now, this is a touring bike. It's a big, heavy, gaudy touring bike, and I know some people don't particularly like that type of motorcycle. This is my preferred type of motorcycle. I want to be able to ride hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. I want to be able to ride, you know, spend 12 hours in the saddle in a day if I want to, and you can do that on a big touring bike. So back to style. I love the style of this bike. For a touring bike, I think it's gorgeous. I'd give it a 10 when it comes to looks. Another factor, of course, is performance. I really like this Thunderstroke 111 motor. It's got a lot of torque down low. It doesn't sign off at all. I can be running 70 miles an hour, and if I have a need to pass an 18-wheeler, I just hit the throttle and it goes. I really, really like the performance. Now, clearly it's not a crotch rocket or anything like that, but it performs very well. See, another factor would be features. This motorcycle is loaded with features, which you would expect some features on a touring bike, but it has some features that either the other brand doesn't offer, or particularly Harley-Davidson, or you'd have to buy a CVO. Let's see, features. So one that the Harley-Davidson does not offer on a touring bike is the electric windshield. I love the electric windshield. I can lower it down, but you're probably hearing the wind there. I can raise it up, and if you notice, it's covered in bugs. But I love the electric windshield. The infotainment system is fantastic. The audio is amazing on the radio. At 80 miles an hour, I can hear the radio crystal clear, set at about 4, and I think the volume goes up to 10. The navigation is great. The screen gives you all kinds of information. This motorcycle came with a tire pressure monitoring system. And so if one of my tires gets low, it shows me on the screen like it would on the dash of your car. Let's see, it has remote locking luggage, which is fantastic. I don't have to dig and fumble around with a barrel key to lock the trunk or to lock the saddlebags. I can push a button on the key fob, or I can push a button on the dash, and it's locked and secured. Same thing with unlocking it. It came with heated grips, which I think the Harley Limiteds come with those, but this one also came with a heated seat, and in the wintertime that heated seat is very nice. The new ones even come with a cooling feature. Mine doesn't have that feature. Let's see, I'm trying to think of, I'm sure I'm missing some other features that this motorcycle has. If I think of any more, I'll come back to it, but for me, certainly the infotainment system, the windshield, the tire pressure monitoring system, the locking, remote locking hardware. Okay, next thing, this is a touring bike, so comfort is important. This is an extremely comfortable motorcycle. I mean, the windshield adds to the comfort. The huge floorboards are fantastic. I can put the ball of my feet on the back of the floorboard. I can put my size 11 foot on the floorboard. I can put the heel of my foot on the front of the floorboard. Lots of range of motion without even considering the highway pegs. I'd already, of course, mentioned the heated seat and grips help with the comfort. The big thing with the comfort on this motorcycle, in my opinion, is the rear shock. It's got a mono shock. It's an air shock. I think it's a Fox brand. It blows the competition out of the water. I bought a 2019 Harley Street Glide with that dial rear suspension. I could not find the sweet spot. Of course, I know the Street Glide has a shorter rear shocks to give it that slam look, but that suspension was beating me to death. I thought, if I'm gonna keep this motorcycle, I'm gonna have to spend another grand on better shocks. So I ended up, after 8 months, trading it in on this Harley, on this Indian. So out on the interstate, where it was beating me to death on the Harley Street Glide, this Indian Roadmaster literally floats over the bumps. Of course, the passenger accommodations are fantastic. What my wife says about the Indian Roadmaster is that you get the style or the iconic brand like a Harley-Davidson, or you get the mystique of a Harley-Davidson with the ride of a Goldwing. I mean, it really, really is tremendously comfortable. So when it comes to iconic brand, style, performance, features, comfort, all of those categories, I would give it a 10, a full 10 in every single one of those categories. But there's one category where it fails, and maybe I should have knocked off some points off of comfort. It certainly affects the comfort. The one area where I think Indian struggles is heat management. Now I realize any air-cooled V-twin, you're going to feel some heat, but sometimes the heat off this 111 is really bothersome. Of course, I do live in Texas. It gets extremely hot. When it bothers me, it's June, July, August. And if you watch my 1-year video of this bike, I pointed out that it doesn't do it all the time. Let's say I'm riding 3 hours on the interstate. I'll be riding along, the heat's not an issue. And then I may get to noticing my right thigh begin to get a little warm underneath my right thigh, to the point to where it really starts to bother me. And then maybe 10 minutes later I realize, well, the heat's gone. And I may run along another 30 minutes and the heat comes back for, who knows, another 10 minutes or so, and then it goes away again. It'll come and go all throughout a long ride. The only thing I can figure is, depends whether I'm riding into the wind, against the wind, getting some crosswinds. I know I think it was the year model after mine, they changed the lower fairing vents, the way they open, so maybe they get more air with the new lowers, or the new vents on the lowers. The year model after mine, they offered the rear cylinder deactivation, which does absolutely no good, I wouldn't think, if you're running on the interstate at freeway speed for hours at a time. That would only help you at red light stopping in town. Now, I've been told if you remove the catalytic converter, put some freer flowing pipes and a freer flowing air breather, it will reduce the heat, increase the performance, and of course make it sound better. So when it comes to heat management, I would only give it a 7. I mean, that's just barely passing. Now, if you lived in northern states, or where the temperature stays cooler, or you don't have as hot summers the way we do, then it probably wouldn't be an issue, but I only give it a 7. So if I took all those categories as if they were all equal, and I don't know that they probably aren't, but I mean, for me, performance and comfort are really high on the list. Of course, they get 10s. But overall, if I added those together and did the math, I would give this motorcycle a 9.5. It's a touring motorcycle. Again, it's not a crotch rocket. It's not a traditional cruiser. It's a big heavy touring bike. Now, again, go back to features. It did come with quick release docking hardware. If I want to remove the trunk, I pull a couple of levers, unplug the lights, unplug the wires to go to the lights. Trunk pops off just as easy as can be. And so that's another great feature. Like I say, I'm sure I'll think of more features later that I forgot. But overall, missed a gear. Overall, this is a fantastic motorcycle. If you're looking at touring bikes and you would consider another brand from what you may be currently riding, go down and give the Indian a test drive, or better yet, see if you can find some place to rent one, and spend several hundred miles on it, and you'll really get a good feel. But again, I'm very pleased with my purchase. I have no interest whatsoever in getting rid of this motorcycle. Like I said, I've got almost 34,000 miles in 2 years. If I keep it 10 years, you're looking at 170,000 miles, and I'd like to try to put 200,000 miles on it, and we'll see. Keep the maintenance up, and we'll see what kind of longevity I can get out of this Thunderstroke motor. But again, I just absolutely love the motorcycle. Other than the heat, that's the only real major flaw it has. But other than that, it is a tremendous motorcycle, and glad to be able to share with you my experience of this particular bike. All right, Samantha, what's the message you have?
Be sure to like this video and subscribe and comment.
You did really good. She's always telling me to say that on my videos, and I never do.